For Scott Stoll here from the Plant Nutrition Project, and I hope you've had a great Monday. Had a great Monday here in my office in Brentwood, Tennessee, just outside of Nashville. Today, I am going to be joined by Dr. Baxter Montgomery. Dr. Montgomery is a fellow of the American College of Cardiology, clinical professor at University of Texas. He's the founder of the Montgomery Heart and Wellness Center outside of Houston, Texas. He's an author, Food Prescription for Better Health. And today he's going to be also telling us about his new docu-series, The Heart and Soul of a Champion, which is outstanding. And so while we're waiting for Dr. Montgomery to join us, which we're going to be talking about disease reversal. And Dr. Montgomery is really an expert in this area. He opened the Montgomery Heart and Wellness Clinic in 1997, so 26 years of disease reversal this year, right? Welcome, Baxter. So great to have you.
Hey, Scott. Welcome. How's it going? Can you hear me okay?
Perfect. Sounds excellent. Thank you.
Wonderful,
Thank you.
wonderful.
Yeah, I was just telling our audience, you've had 26 years of disease reversal there at the Montgomery Heart and Wellness. And so, I think that's a great way for us to kind of encapsulate our conversation today, is really focusing on something that you and I weren't taught as medical school students or residents, that you could actually reverse disease.
Yeah, that's exactly right. 26 years, time flies when you're having fun. So it's been a great experience. It's been a journey, I can tell you that. But you're exactly right. We've both gone beyond our training, if you will, which I think is an important point. Because, medical school is a training and maybe a little bit of an indoctrination. And the beauty from our perspective is that we were able to look around and go beyond that training or indoctrination and look out on the horizon. So, there's something different here. And, let's take a look and evaluate that.
Yeah, so just maybe a good place to start is in your mind, how have you come to define disease reversal? And then I'd love to know your understanding or how you see that physiologically happening.
So, great question. So, in order to address the issue of disease reversal, one has to step back and say, okay, what is disease to start with? What is a disease state? So when we talk about chronic illnesses, we'll give them labels. We say high blood pressure, we say heart failure, diabetes, arthritis, or cancer. And so we put labels on these chronic illnesses, and the labels are not accurate and they're not descriptive of the underlying process. And so the first process or step toward reversing disease is understanding it in terms of its core and its nature. So first and foremost is when I think about a disease state, a chronic illness that is, I think about it in terms of being a biochemical imbalance, a physiological imbalance. Perhaps I'll throw in the disruption of the microbiome, which contributes to those things. So when I think about it in that terms, and imbalance of the biochemistry and imbalance of the physiology, so then when I say, okay, when I want to reverse an illness, I'm thinking about reversing a biochemical imbalance or reversing a physiological imbalance. Now that process is what's happening regardless of what label it has. So whether it has the label of heart failure, the label of diabetes, or the label of hypertension, I'm focusing on the underlying physiological process at the cellular and subcellular level. And so when I think about it that way, I say, okay, well, what are the things that contribute to that? Well, you have increased oxidative stress. And for the general public understanding, the best way to think about that is increased toxic chemicals in the bodies and imbalance of those. Toxic chemicals versus antioxidants. The other thing is increased inflammation. The way you think about it, inflammation is about underlying biochemical fire. And the third major component, which probably contributes to the other two, is a disruption of your microbiome. And the way I like to think about that is your ecosystem, the microbes that live in and around you that create a balance that helps you with your immune system and the like. So when you look at it from those areas, you say, okay, then what I need to do, if someone comes in with an illness, a chronic illness or multiple chronic illnesses, I say, well, okay, in what way are they imbalanced? And we do biological tests. We say, okay, there's a lot of inflammation, There's a lot of toxic substances, et cetera. Some of that's taken through the history. And so we start to correct that. Number one, we remove, the foods and other things that are contributing to the imbalance, toxic foods, inflammatory foods. And then number two, we nourish the body with foods that then bring about a disruption or correction of that imbalance. Things that reduce, increase inflammation, and things that reduce increased oxidative stress.
Yeah, you make such a great point, and I think that's part of the misunderstanding around disease is that we're taught that disease is a label. It's something that we've measured, and it's either a lab test, it's abnormality on an imaging test. It's something that
Yep.
we've found with our, level of sensitivity in medical testing today, and we label that as the disease. But in reality, the disease starts, as you mentioned, deep down epigenetically, angiogenically, inflammatorily. I mean, all these systems get disrupted and it manifests in something that becomes a label.
That's right.
And I think it's hard for our colleagues to really understand how can you reverse blood pressure without really understanding what the original cause was. A lot of my side programs, I have this picture of a little boy pulling a root up in a garden, and he's pulling with all of his might because he wants to get the roots out. And I imagine that's what you're doing when people come to see you. You're pulling disease out by the root. And that maybe before we dive any deeper, I'd love for you to share a story or two, maybe your most incredible stories of disease reversal, because you actually get people that come and are admitted to the ICU.
Yes.
And you start in the ICU and work them out.
No, that's exactly right. So I'll give you a few very critical and some not as critical. One, a patient who was in the ICU, she was, this is a number of years ago, and it was actually a long-term acute care hospital. And just to set the stage, it was a small long-term acute care hospital. I was the medical director. So just so that people understand, I had some leverage in that hospital where I can do some of these things. But essentially what happened is that she had a long-standing chronic illness with chronic obstructive lung disease, heart failure. I had implanted a defibrillator in. She had, hypertension. And so a number of chronic, illnesses are organ dysfunction. She became so ill, I think she had an infection. She became so ill that she had to be intubated. She was on life support. She became very acidotic. Her kidney started to fail. The nephrologist recommended dialysis. The family refused. And so we knew that if we didn't correct things, that she would die. So the family did not want to undergo dialysis. So what I did is I'll tell you what, let me try this. And this was very early in my days of using nutritional detox. So, this was one of the earlier patients I treated this ill. So she had a PEG tube or a feeding tube. And what we started doing is creating these super green drinks, and we fed it through the feeding tube. So she was getting freeze-dried organic greens, and we fed that through the feeding tube. I took her off the regular feeding tubes that the hospital provided, and then I started just removing medications as her condition allowed. And so she started making copious amounts of mucus. The respiratory therapist had to suction a lot of that out. Her vitals all those things started to improve over time. The renal function got better. She eventually walked out of the hospital.
Wow.
Another patient, and I presented her in a number of presentations I've done, had lupus. She had severe heart failure, severe mitral regurgitation. And she had cardiac arrhythmias. I had to admit her to the hospital because her condition was unstable, and she was in my opinion, was in a lupus flare that was triggering a lot of that. So that was triggering a lot of inflammation. So we got admitted to the hospital, got her condition stabilized, and I talked to one of my colleagues who we talked about doing a mitral clip to fix the mitral regurgitation. He saw her; she had been in the CCU. He looked at the chart, saw how badly she was doing. So look, I don't think it's going to help. She's too far gone. Let her die. I talked to another colleague of mine. Suggested implanting a biventricular pacing defibrillator to synchronize the ventricles, improve her condition. She says, no, she's too sick. Let her die. So we got palliative care involved, and they said, well, let's just discharge her to a hospice and we'll let her pass on. She was on about 6 or 7 medications, one of which was a milrinone infusion. Milrinone is a drug we use in severe heart failure patients to squeeze the last bit of life to sort of help them hold on. So she was on that. We sent her out. There was a miscommunication. The hospice facility was not able to manage the milrinone. They sent her back. So the palliative care team said, look, we're going to have to stop the milrinone here and let you die here. So the patient was in tears. I went to her room and said, wait a minute, I want to try something. So I put her on a detox. And with the heart failure, we did super green smoothies and the like. And I was able to wean her off the milrinone in 7 days. I got her down from 7 medications to 1, which is PRN. She left the house, was able to walk and exercise. These are cases when the body's in severe increased oxidative stress, severe inflammatory condition, and by simply pouring optimal nutrition in their situation, in this case, raw superfoods and the like, we essentially put the fire out, and the antioxidants from the superfoods stabilize all of the free radicals and reduce the oxidative stress. So this is fighting it at the biochemical level. In the second patient, arrhythmia calmed down, the acidosis cleared up, the cardiac function cleared up. She was able to get up, walk, function, and did well leaving the hospital.
Baxter, that's incredible. And you know what? I just want to appreciate you for not giving up on patients. You know, so often it's so easy because it's difficult to get these things done to just agree with our colleagues and say, we've done our best and we're going to just move on to the next patient, but you refuse to give up. And the woman's alive today.
That's right. And we just, you know, there's a strong will nature that I have, and there are these types of things that I think helps out.
I know you've been called the David versus the Goliath, and I think it's absolutely true. It is true.
Yeah.
You know, and I just want to highlight something and have you comment on it because I think it's so true. You know, a lot of people don't see disease reversal because they don't go far enough in the nutritional and lifestyle intervention. Can you just comment on that? Because I think that's really important for everyone to understand.
I agree. So that's a very important point. When we look at nutritional intervention, it's almost like any other type of intervention. So let's say, for instance, you're going to prescribe an antihypertensive for someone. So you prescribe the drug at, say, 5 milligrams, and maybe the top dose is 40 milligrams. And they come back and the blood pressure is a little bit better, but not all the way better. Then you're going to increase the dose, okay? You'll give them more of the medication. Well, guess what? If you prescribe a nutritional regimen and the patient's a little better, but not quite, guess what? You have to increase the dose. Now, when you increase the dose of nutrition, you make it more precise. Now, some people like to say more extreme. So when we optimize nutrition, we gravitate from 100% plant-based. Of course, you want to get away from the plant-based junk food, get away from stuff that's fried. We get away from microwave. We can steam and boil, but guess what? If they're sicker, we get away from anything cooked, go all raw. And then if they have inflammatory conditions, severe heart failure, then we will go with cold pressed juices or smoothies because their ability to break down the solid food is impaired. And then we increase the fasting window. We don't have to do a total 24-hour fast, but we may do a 2-hour feeding window or 4-hour feeding window where they may have anywhere from 20 to 22 hours of fasting each day. And that allows the body for increased healing while at the same time is being nourished in a passive way, i.e. with a well-done cold-pressed, mostly vegetable juice or well-done super green smoothie. So the body's being nourished that way while at the same time it is allowing to heal during the fasting state.
Yeah, that's incredible. I always call that, you know, just maximizing the nutritional intervention, and we're flooding the system with, you know, nutrient density, antioxidants, minerals, and vitamins.
That's right.
It's really important. And you know, all of this has led to, you know, your recent docu-series, Heart and Soul of a Champion.
Yes.
Which I think is wonderful because it gives people a window of opportunity to see what you're doing and to watch people's lives transformed through the interventions that you're using at your clinic, which have been time tested now over 26 years. Can you maybe share with us the genesis of the idea for the docuseries?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, it started, so over the years, we started a number of years ago when I realized this approach worked. I started one patient at a time. And I would go in the room and just write out salad recipes and things. And I'd have to have them come back within 7 days. So such a rigid regimen. We have to have close follow-up. And people were successful in 7 days. But I had to follow them closely, coach them, etc. So we had great results with that. However, over time, we had to then create more support. So we got to the point we had these boot camp classes, as we call them, where we did nutritional detox. We gave them recipes. And so we did these types of things where we had groups of patients. So not only we were supporting them, they were supporting each other, and so on and so forth. So we had that going on where over time we started creating results. So in 2009, a retired NFL player who was a pharmaceutical rep calling on me noticed what we were doing. He said, look, there are a bunch of retired athletes that can benefit from this. So I met with a group of retired athletes in the Houston area. And what I did is that we invited them to come and join the boot camp class. We had a professional film crew to come in, and we documented it all. At that time, I didn't have all of the distribution capabilities and so on. And so I wasn't able to make that work effectively. So that was in my back of my mind. So what happened was this last year, I met Daryl Green at a Veg Fest up in Virginia and said, look, I've been wanting to do this. And so one thing led to another. We filmed it last summer and everything moved forward with the program.
Yeah, and maybe give us a few highlights of some of the transformations that people may see as they watch this docuseries.
So Heart and Soul of a Champion, what it does, as you said, we come into our environment and we watch patients go through it. The nutrition, the exercise, the ozone therapy, all the modalities. And we watch them day by day. We look at their lives, their family lives, how chronic illness has affected them in many different ways. We see ups and downs. It's not just the fact that someone comes in and they eat plant foods, they're great the next week or 4 weeks later. We see how people struggle. We see how people, fall off the plan. We see, some patients who come and they don't make their minds up and they go back and, maybe they don't have the best things happen. So you get the inside nuts and bolts of what's happening. The other thing is that you see how our office works. Exactly how do we do this? How do we see patients? How do we evaluate patients? How do we evaluate, patients, who are going through this whole process? And you see all of those things. You see all the warts and all of the other things that are going on with our program.
Yeah, I think that's really valuable for clinicians to have that opportunity to see what you've learned over 26 years. And for clinicians and the general public, just to see the power of a lifestyle intervention. And as you mentioned, all of us that have been doing this a long time realize that it's easy to take out a prescription pad and write down, whole food, plant-based lifestyle. Here's what you do. And we can outline, the pillars of lifestyle medicine and the diet in about 3 minutes. But to actually send that person back out into their life and, to assist them and come alongside of them in making that transformation is really difficult. And one of the things you mentioned that you are showing inside of the docuseries is how your team works.
Yes.
So maybe just give us a highlight of the team that you have learned that's necessary to help people walk out a lifestyle transformation.
That's a great question, because how the team works and how we constructed the team has developed over the years based on challenges we've had with certain patients.
Right. Yeah.
So, for example, early on I said I want one patient at a time, but patient, they go out and they get bad food someplace. And then the patient come back and say, look, the recipes are great, but we want to buy the food from you. We can't make this. Guess what? We built a restaurant. Then beyond the patients eating the prepared food, they say, well, I want to prepare it myself. They go to the supermarkets, get the bad stuff. Guess what? We have to create a grocery store. The way we schedule patients, someone who's coming from out of state, the way we organize that process has all been defined based on what's necessary to help that patient become successful. So, for instance, you'll see how patients who call in, they may not be aware of how to prepare for a visit. So we've had to construct how we schedule patients. And someone calls in for an appointment and say, well, I saw you on YouTube, I have heart failure, and I'm coming in from a heart failure. And we'll see someone with a suitcase that just flew in from, California, Washington, D.C. And so, wait, but it's kind of, we don't have a magic wand here. So we've had to learn to put together a process for those patients who are calling in. So, okay, here we give us your basic information. Our clinical team will follow up. So all those things you'll see the nuts and bolts. How I interact with my mid-levels, our medical assistants, how they actually interact with the patient, the different treatment modalities. So how we work as a team, the fact that we are all encouraging those types of things. So you see how there's a team effect. The docu-series will see me working with my mid-levels, discussing each patient, discussing the plan of care. Okay, what are the labs? What are the abnormalities? What's the strategy? What are their shortcomings? What are their triumphs? How we must adjust your treatment. Okay, so we go through all of those things. You see us make those a change in a stepwise manner. So the idea behind it is that it's to inform. So you're going to see people with severe chronic illnesses coming in, and you're going to see them undergo some pretty significant changes. Hopefully it will inspire the viewer to say, wait a minute, I think whatever my illness, that person has high blood pressure, I have high blood pressure, and theirs improved in a short period of time, I can probably do the same. And hopefully you'll be entertained along the way as you're being informed and inspired to do the same.
Wow, it's just a rich treasure of information and learning opportunities. It's fantastic. And please tell everyone where they can learn more and watch the docu-series, The Heart and Soul of a Champion.
Yes, you can go to the website. It's heartandsoulofachampion.com. And that's the main website. You can, there's a lot of information on that website. You can watch the trailer, so it gives you a brief synopsis. You can give your name and email address and see episode 1 free on that website. Or if you're ready to dive in and look at, the whole the first season has 8 episodes, you can purchase it. It has a button right at the top or throughout the website. You can purchase and download it and start watching right away. And we've had a number of patients, individuals who binge watch, and we've gotten great reviews so far.
Yeah, we just have a question that popped up. They asked, have you published some of your interventions and outcomes?
Great question. The answer is yes. We've published some of our interventions. So the food intervention we published a number of years ago. And what we found in our food intervention, and the food intervention is the food that come from our restaurant. So we had a number of individuals, and the population was individuals with increased BMI, hypertension, and hyperlipidemia. And what we showed in that population was that we showed very significant reduction in hyperlipidemia of about 16–17% in 4 weeks. We showed about a 30% reduction in inflammation in 4 weeks. In fact, we showed a 16% reduction in lipoprotein(a), which is an atherogenic molecule that predisposes to heart attack. We were the first to show that in the medical literature in terms of nutrition, and we showed a 16% reduction in just 4 weeks. We were also able to show a 3.4% reduction in hemoglobin A1C in 4 weeks, which, to give you a comparison, lots of the diabetic drugs, it takes, about 4 to 6 months in many cases, so about a 1 to 2% reduction in A1C, and we had a very significant, statistically significant reduction of 3.4% in just 4 weeks. And overall, with these positive changes, also weight reduction about 6%, blood pressure reduction, and the like. With all of these changes, we also showed a 40% reduction in medications, including reduction in blood pressure medication in the study. So we also published a case series of patients with congestive heart failure who's had an average ejection fraction of 22%, which went up to about 44% on average in that case series. So yes, we've scientifically validated this work, and we have other studies that we're planning to move forward with very soon.
And you know what I love about you, Baxter? You're like me. We're just getting started, right? You have a big vision.
That's right. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Maybe share with everyone your vision, because you're in the shadow of the huge healthcare system there in Houston, right?
Yeah, that's a great point. So our vision is to make integrative health the wave of the future. We want to show people that you can reverse these potentially devastating chronic illnesses in a natural way. You can do it with minimal to no, pharmacological agents or surgeries. You can at least reduce your need for it, and in many cases eliminate your need for it. And you can also do it while achieving a higher quality of life, and not only having a higher quality of life, getting to your optimal health. That in some cases may be getting back to some of your performance in your prime. So that's one vision. And so what we've done, we have our one center, which we plan to expand. We also have online programs that we have an international client base and also a national client base. So we have online coaching, online communities, support groups, as well as our facility where we can bring patients in who have advanced disease. We can detox over a period of 4 to 8 weeks. So the vision is there, and then expanding beyond that may include licensing and expansions of physical plant centers.
That is fantastic.
And the research, of course, we plan to expand as well.
That's fantastic. We had a question that came up. Do you know of anybody doing similar work in New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Delaware?
I don't offhand, but I bet if they went to plantrition.com,
plant-based providers,
plant-based providers,
website, you can maybe find a physician. But what I love, Dexter, is you are setting the course. I think as you're talking, I'm seeing pictures of like champions in different sports, and the true champions are the ones that set a new standard.
That's
and
right.
That's what I see in you. The title of your docuseries is really appropriate, not just because you brought in a bunch of athletes and it's the heart and soul of a champion, but really it's the heart and soul of you. And
That's right.
I just want to appreciate you as a champion, because you've been doing this work for 26 years. You've taken a lot of risks. You've stepped way out there to help people because you have a compassionate heart. And you are a champion.
Well, thank you very much. I'm working with champions like you, so we have a lot of champions and the many brave patients. I want to give a shout out to them. The patients who come in, we've had patients who, I remember one patient, he was in a heart transplant unit in New York City. He saw one of the videos, checked himself out of the hospital, flew down to detox and improve his health. We've seen so many incredible. Another patient in a hospital unit of heart transplant looked us up and ordered food. We shipped detox meal plans to the hospital. Detox, got out of the hospital, and continued. These patients show so much bravery. They too are champions. And so that I want to give a shout out to them as well.
That's right. Amen. You're right. They are truly champions to step out and do something so different and so radical, and see a different vision for their life. Yeah, it's been
wonderful, wonderful.
Thank you for joining me, Baxter. I just want to remind people, if you want to see this docuseries, Heart and Soul of a Champion, you can go to the website, heartandsoulofchampion.com. And, I think this week I'm going to have my family. I've been watching some. I'm going to have my family watch it because it's really inspiring work. And I appreciate you very much, Baxter. Thanks for being here today.
Well, thank you very much, Scott. I appreciate you having me on, and I appreciate all the work that you're doing with Plantrition, because it's taken us all to kind of move this ship forward.
Yeah, it does take all of us. Absolutely right. It's a community that will be successful. And all the people that have joined us today, thank you. Thanks for taking time out to join us. We're a small little group of people in a big world that needs a lot of help. And it's the heart like Baxter's heart, with compassion, fueled by a different vision of life for people that brings about change. So we thank you for joining us. Plantritionproject.com. Montgomery Heart and Wellness Center, heartandsoulofachampion.com to get more information and join us on this incredible journey. So thanks, everyone. Have a great Monday evening. Thank you, Baxter. Loved it. Thank you, my friend.
Thanks a bunch. Have a good day.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.